70 to 100 AD, the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. And we're using BC and AD because the subject of this is Christ Church. No one knows for sure when Matthew and Luke wrote their Gospels. It was sometime between the years 70 AD and 100 AD, 34 to 64 years after Jesus died. There is no evidence of any discourse about a virgin birth while Joseph, Mary, and Jesus lived. Matthew and Luke, the originators of the fable, never met Joseph, Mary, or Jesus, never knew them. But Matthew and Luke are the sole historical source for this tale. In 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea convenes for 2 months to decide Bible things. Hundreds of bishops traveled to Turkey to meet for 2 months to make important decisions, like the one that declared Easter would forevermore be on the first Sunday following the first full moon after the vernal equinox. Very wicked. 300 AD, the Edict. 55 years later, the Edict of Thessalonica happened, banning any alternative forms of worship, and it made Nicene Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. So yes, it is early in the timeline, but so far Christianity has codified its beliefs and outlawed any other beliefs. 850 AD. Pope Joan is my absolute favorite character from Catholic history. Are you trying to tell us that the Catholic Church had a female pope? Yes, but she had to be a cross-dresser to pull it off. Young Joan just wanted to access the library. She was 13 years old and she just wanted to be able to read. She wanted to have access to the books. So she ran away from home, shaved her head, put on the clothes of a young boy, and joined a monastery. She had a multi-year romance with an older monk until they were discovered and had to run away. They fled their monastery in northern France, the part of France known as Anglicus. She was known as John of Anglicus, and history has long forgotten his name. The two of them headed south to Italy and the Mediterranean Sea. He died en route. No one knows how, but those were rough times. Friar Joan, or John, quickly established herself as a popular street preacher. And when Pope Leo died, the people demanded that Joan, Friar John, be appointed as Pope. She ruled as Pope for several years, but alas, fainted in a procession bulging with child. So they stoned her to death, and they changed the procession route and wrote her out of the history books. 1096. For the next 175 years, from 1096 to 1275 AD, Christianity brought the world 8 bloody crusades. 100 years into the Crusades, the medieval Inquisition began. And where the Crusades were a series of military campaigns, the medieval Inquisition was something else entirely. A system of institutions and laws established by the Catholic Church to combat heresy within Christian communities. It was aimed at those who deviated from accepted Christian beliefs and practices. And punishments for heretics could include imprisonment, confiscation of property, and execution. During those 170 years of Crusades, 2 theological ideas were codified into Catholic law. 1139, the Second Lateral Council of 1139 made celibacy a law and required all priests and bishops to turn over their personal possessions to the Church. And the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 codified confession and introduced the necessity of a priest to hear it. The Crusades ended in 1270. In 1274, at the Council of Lyon, purgatory was defined and codified. By the year 1300, the medieval Inquisition had wound down, but they had all those dungeons and torture devices sitting idle. Just a short while later, in 1324 in Ireland, the first documented witch trial happened. In 1431, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake by the Catholic Church after she led their armies to victory for saying she had divine inspiration and help. But she was sainted in 1920. They continued witch burnings for hundreds of years, but in 1478, the Spanish Inquisition began. What year did slave trading take off? Because that was also Roman Catholic approved. Around 1500, international slave trading of Africans was initiated by the Portuguese, but the Dutch, the British, and the French quickly joined in. It was a Christian-sanctioned trade. No minister, preacher, or priest ever refused to bless a ship loaded with slaves. Well, there might have been one. In 1517, Pope Leo X codified indulgences so you could kill your slave or beat your wife and pay your way out of hell. All the Leo popes were messed up. In 1542, the Roman Inquisition began. Pope Paul III started this Inquisition in response to the popularity of the Protestant movement. Note that by this time, the Spanish Inquisition is in its 321st year of its 348 years of operation. Are you telling me we had up to 8 crusades and 3 inquisitions? So far, yes, not even counting slavery or witch burnings. In 1582, the new year changes to the dead of winter, and anyone who doesn't celebrate then is considered a fool. That was the birth of April Fool's Day. I was just saying that we should treat April Fool's Day more solemnly, out of respect for the fools. Before the adoption of the Gregorian calendar, the new year was celebrated around the end of April, end of March. When the Gregorian calendar was introduced in 1582, those who celebrated were called fools. Well, there you go. That's some solemn shit. In 1597, King James VI writes a book about witches, acknowledging that some people do have psychic powers, and he called the book Demonology. And he set off a renewed fervor of witchcraft accusations. He also had the Bible published in English. You know it as the King James Version. We don't know how many died from the witch burnings and the drownings, but they say anywhere from 100,000 to 9 million, so probably no clue. Galileo was forced by the Roman Inquisition to recant his belief that the earth goes around the sun and spent the rest of his life under house arrest. Died in 1633. In 1799, the Roman Inquisition ends. In 1826, the Spanish Inquisition ends after 348 years. That one originally targeted Muslims, but moved on. It is estimated that 150,000 people were prosecuted, but only 5,000 executed. The medieval Inquisition lasted 200 years. The Roman Inquisition lasted 257 years. The Spanish Inquisition lasted 348 years. In 1850, slavery was outlawed in most places, but not until 12.8 million Africans were ripped out of their homes. War, slavery, and witch burnings aside, what year did they formalize the dogma of the Immaculate Conception? 1854, Pope Pius IX. Why? No clue. When did papal infallibility become a thing? 1870 through the dogmatic Constitution of the Church of Christ. Very official sounding. Are we done here? Yes, for today. Know your history.